We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I am excited to have with me the one and only Tom Elliott today. How are you doing, Tom?
Hey Morgan, yeah, good, really well, thank you. You?
I'm in a great mood, and I love your shirt. It looks like you have suspenders or fake suspenders.
No,
or just
it's just a jacket. It's nothing exciting. Yeah, just a jacket. But hey,
you're fully dressed up for an episode in the right mood, wearing your Sunday best. I love it.
Well, what have you got in your drink, Morgan?
So I have my favorite. I am not Irish. I've never even been to Ireland, but I'm a little bit addicted to Irish coffees.
Nice,
So
nice.
the cool thing about Irish coffee is it masquerades as normal coffee, but you can be getting drunk and no one else will know except for me. Me getting the wackier my behavior, the more people will realize.
Very nice. Well, I didn't go for a coffee because it's 9 p.m. here, so I went for my standard lemonade and lime. I mean, if that, you're gonna have to watch me during this interview in case I get hammered. But apart from that, it's going to be fun.
That's great. And with the lemonade and lime in hand, I am all ears and excited to hear about your unique, slightly off kind of client horror story. Let's go.
Yeah, so I'm a corporate event host and comedy magician. So I travel the country here in the UK, doing like award ceremonies and galas and annual dinners. And I have great fun doing that. I love doing it, hosting their events. But today's story focuses more on the comedy and magic side. So I perform at those things as well. When I'm hosting, I do a bit of performance there. But many years ago, several years ago, I had a real ambition to try and do my own theatre show, right?
Okay.
So I'm full-time, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to tour theatres doing this show? And I managed to get an agent, and this agent specialized in booking shows into theatres, and she was interested in what I was doing, and she's great. She was really great, and she got me booked into about 5 or 6 theatres. Now, most of them, all but one of them, were kind of small studio theatres, so maybe maximum of 100 seats. One of them only had 70 seats, and I managed to kind of network locally in these areas and managed to find groups who would then bulk buy tickets. And for the majority of them, all but one, I filled 75% of the theatre or whatever with an audience, and I had a great time. It was a great show. But
fantastic. But there's always a but.
There's always a but. And let me just say, at this stage in my career, I was excited, I was very naive, and I was dreaming big without any barriers and without any limitations on that dream, right? One of the theatres that came back to Yvonne, my agent, and said yes to having me in my show was a big 800-seat theatre. Okay,
800 seats.
800 seat. Now, let me assure you, I'm not a celebrity. I am not well known. Yes, it's my full-time job. I do this for a living, and I'm grateful to do so. But I'm not a celebrity. Anyway, they said, Tom.
Wait, so you usually fill 70 seats, so this is basically 10 times as big as usual.
And to be fair, even filling 70 seats was a bit of a push in an area that I wasn't known, right? And anyway, they said to my agent Yvonne, they said, "Oh, comedy sells really well, and magic sells really well, and so my stuff is clean." And we pitched it as a little bit of a family thing, and it's a family show as well, so that means families will buy tickets. And if we can just fill the stalls, which was about 400, then it would be great. And so we'd love to have Tom. So Yvonne comes back to me and she says, "Hey, big theatre in Dunstable wants to book." I said, "Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great." Got really excited, thinking, "Oh, well, apparently they think it will sell." So let's do it. So I signed the contract, right? Signed the contract.
And when
sent it
you
off.
signed it, you knew it was 800 seats. You had a sense of how big it was.
I knew it was 800 seats, and I thought it was too big, but I thought, hey, they believe in me. I'm going to go for it.
You trusted the professional.
I trusted the professional. Absolutely. Theatre said comedy sells and family sell and magic sells. And my agent was behind it. I thought I'm going to go for it. I thought this is the peak of my career. Like if I sell all those 800 seats, this is it. Like I'm off.
You're me.
And so anyway, signed the contract. Didn't really read it, to be honest. Signed it, sent it off, and off I went. Well, now, before I go any further in the story, let me just explain this, that the way an artist gets paid in theatre is there's a percentage split on the income from ticket sales. Okay. So in this scenario, it was a 70% split in my favor and then 30% to the theatre. Obviously, there's VAT and there's all of that stuff tied up in that. But generally, it's a 70-30 split in percentage, right? Well, the other thing to know is that when you put on a show in a theatre, the artist supplies all of the promotional material. Or if an artist has got a management, then they would do all of that. But in my case, I had to supply all the promotional material. So I paid for these beautiful posters to be designed and printed. And they had several requirements. They required 1,000 A5 flyers and 50 A3 and 2 A1, all of that stuff. Got it all printed. I probably spent, I don't know, about £100 for that venue just on printing and all of that, among other venues as well. And sent them all off. So I paid for that. So I've already spent maybe £100. It was a couple of hours away, so £50 to £100 in expenses and all of that. I get that. Well, 2 days before the event, I get a report sent to me on email, and 30 tickets had sold, or 36.
30.
Yeah, 30.
Uh-oh.
So
Wow.
you can imagine how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling deflated because I thought this was going to be my big win with 800 people raving and screaming my name.
And you had no clue leading up that it would be 30. Like this is like the first number you saw.
Yeah, 30 in an 800 seat theatre. It was painful. Anyway, the true entrepreneurial, dedicated, goal-setting, ambitious me decided, right, well, let's not let this put me down. Let's work on it. So I was busy typing away, trying to contact groups and whatnot. And do you want to know how many I managed to get up to after my hustling, after my big hustle, and after my hard work? I managed to get it up to 50. So I spent hours trying to. So anyway, we got to 50, and I thought, right, I can't do a show for 50 people in an 800 seat. So I rang my agent Yvonne, and Yvonne was great, and she laughed with me, and she said, "The problem is, Tom."
And by the way, I just want to point out, I think it's great where you said she laughed with me, that she laughed and that you laughed. I'm clearly not a comedian, because if I were in your shoes, I think I would have been crying.
Well,
but comedians laugh at everything.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you can't take yourself too seriously, particularly in the arts. The arts is brutal in things like this. So I rang Yvonne and I said, I can't do it. And she said, Tom, the problem is, she said, remember that contract you signed? I said, yeah, the contract. Yeah, of course I do. I remember that. I read it thoroughly, Yvonne, didn't I? I read it thoroughly. And she said, well, once you're in the theatre program, once you're in the program and it's been advertised, theatres are very reluctant to cancel a show, because that, for all they know, 800 people might turn up on the doorstep at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night to watch Tom Elliott, the unknown comedy magician, right? That nobody's ever heard of, the best kept secret in the UK. For all they know, it could sell, so they don't like cancelling it. And I said,
they also don't like cancelling, because that hurts their bottom line.
Well, exactly, and it gets worse. Morgan, because what I realized is Yvonne pointed out the contract to me and she said, remember you signed that contract, Tom? And I went, yeah, the contract, that thing. She said, well, there's a clause in that contract, and I can't remember the name of it now, but they have a term for it. And basically what it is, it's they put a price tag on all of the different marketing that they do on your behalf of the show. And that price tag gets to a certain point and then they start to fund it. But if you don't hit that mark, then you have to cover that, basically. If they don't make that much money to cover that, I've forgotten the name of it
So
now.
I see. So there's like a minimum amount that they have to make before they can start splitting that money. But
absolutely.
As per the contract, what happens if only 50 people come?
Well, so 50 people had bought tickets, £14, I think they were, which does not total a lot of money at all. £14 is relatively cheap for a theatre, but there we go, 50 people. So I didn't hit the quota for covering this clause in the contract for marketing. And so, Morgan, what I realized is, well, first of all, I'll tell you that in a minute, but I did the show. I had to do the show. I was locked into contract. So I drove to Dunstable and I did a full 2-hour show by myself, right? To 50 people in a big theatre, an 800-seat theatre in Dunstable. And it was the longest 2 hours of my life. It was painful.
So was it like this huge theater where like one person over there, one person over there?
Yeah.
Oh
it wasn't even, you're right. It wasn't even as if the 50 people were sat in a nice cuddly group in the front few rows. No. They were spread. There was about a row of 8 in front of me, about 3 rows back from the front. There was a couple over there, a couple over there, a family here and a family there. But this is an 800 seat. So with that amount of people, I might as well have performed in an arena because I just couldn't see them. I couldn't hear them. And the thing is, Morgan, with regards to comedy, like people laugh out loud when they have the comfort of knowing that they're not exposed and that other people are laughing around them. So the psychology of comedy is you need people sat close together because otherwise everybody feels exposed. Nobody laughs out loud. It's like when you're watching a film at your house. You don't laugh in the same way that you would if you were watching a comedian live or with your mates, right? You laugh in a different way.
That's actually an interesting point. I once read an article in an academic journal, like a psychology journal, 20 years ago, so I barely remember it, about that. It made the argument that one of the key reasons why like the TV sitcom format took off in like the 1950s was with the addition of the laugh track to sitcoms.
Absolutely. Yeah, they put that in because otherwise you don't laugh in the same way, do you?
For that reason, the laugh track has other people laughing with you, so you're not alone laughing.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you permission and a safety net to laugh because you feel like there are other people. So maybe I should have had
and a safety net to laugh.
Yeah, and maybe I should have had it, Morgan. But maybe I should have had the sound guy pressing.
You should have had a laugh track button.
It might have restored my soul a little bit because it was a painful gig because everything I did, even my tried and tested material, just wasn't getting a response. It was awkward. It was so awkward.
Out of pure curiosity, did you make any jokes on the spot to call attention to the awkwardness of the situation?
I did, but do you know, in the general rule of thumb in any sort of performance is don't do it. Don't call it. It's a difficult balance between acknowledging it and getting a laugh from it or pointing out the obvious and everyone's going, yeah, we know. And it kind of got that reaction. It kind of got,
I see.
Yeah, I know. And anyway, and what makes it worse, by the way, is that about 8 of these people in the 3rd row back, I knew personally. But what that meant was 20% of the audience came to see me at stage door. Now, that's an impressive stat. If only people knew, well, as long as people don't know that there was only 50 people there. But still, Um,
it's
I was
it's a great example of how to mislead with statistics.
absolutely, yeah. I was in my dressing room at the end, and one of the technicians comes backstage, and he knocked on my dressing room door, and he went, "Hi, mate." He said, "There's people at stage door for you," and I laughed because obviously, normally only celebrities get people waiting at stage door, and normally it's like a handful of people out of the massive crowds. But no, most of the audience were there.
Hi, Mom.
Yeah, it was people I knew, and they'd all come to say hello. But we might as well have just done the show at stage door because it would have been easier. Anyway, so I did the show. It was painful. It was horrible. I didn't enjoy it. And I spoke to Yvonne at the end and speaking on the phone. And I was like, "Oh, Yvonne, it was terrible. There was nothing we can do." Anyway, as it transpired, Yvonne reminds me of that little clause in the contract. And here's the thing. Not only did I spend £100 or so on the posters, not only did I spend another £100 or so getting there, but I didn't earn any money from it because the 70%
Right.
wasn't there. Not only that, though, Morgan. Not only that. Not did I just pay for the travel and the posters and do a free show, but because of the marketing price tag that they put on, I actually owed them £350. So I spent maybe £500-600 on the worst show of my life, and I invested in it.
Well, I'm glad that you left it at the spot, and you're now still at a point years later where you can still laugh at it.
Well, the thing is, I said to Yvonne on the phone, I said, "Here's my commitment to you, Yvonne." I said, at the end of my career, I'm going to finish my career at that theatre with a full sold-out crowd. That's my end goal now. For before I retire, my last final gig will be on that stage with a sold-out audience. That's the goal.
I love it. You can also do estimates. If you did it 5 years ago or whenever this was, you got 50 people. If you did it today, maybe you'll get 100. It could be like your KPI, the number of likely fans to come to see you in the Dunsterpool Theatre.
Yeah. If we can get to 800 in the next, how old am I? I'm 35. So by the time I'm 60, that's a rate of what? I don't know, 50 people a year extra, and we might get there.
The only way to hit that is to figure out how to go viral on TikTok.
Yeah. Well, I'm relying on you for that, Morgan. This podcast, right?
Millions and millions of people might be clamoring at your door to come see you in the theater.
I hope so.
So, okay, so I love this story. A little bit different than our normal stories, but hysterical, and there are a bunch of lessons we can extract from that. I have a few that I'm already getting from this, but before I start sharing some of my lessons, tell me about some of your key learnings from this disastrous moment.
So I think the first one for me that was really obvious was that it highlighted how naive I was. And I think particularly with people, I find this particularly with people in the arts, people that run an arts-based business, you get so wrapped up in the arts that you forget the realities of business, if that makes sense. And I spend quite a lot of time helping and coaching people in the arts to think business-wise and to move forward entrepreneurially and to try and put some entrepreneurial skills in their tool bag, if you like, toolkit, to try and keep things going. Because so often you get so focused on the art side of it that the realities of the business, I always say, it's 90% business and 10% show business. It is largely on the business. And I think in that season, what I learned was I was incredibly naive to the business side. And I thought you put on a show, you put on a comedy magic show, and the belief that people will come is enough. In reality, it's a lot harder to get people to buy tickets, particularly if you're not celebrity, if you're if you're not known, people don't spend their hard-earned money on taking a risk of something they don't know very often.
On the first lesson, I have an insight I want to add to that. I agree with that lesson 100%. And when I manage teams and train people, I often make that same point. I want to share with you and everyone watching my language, my way of making that exact same point you made, which is the following. I often observe almost all restaurants fail. And not just that, almost all restaurants make no money. Literally 98% of all restaurants are closed within 2 years of opening, never turning a profit. It's actually like the worst business to go into. Why is that? Here's my theory. Who opens a restaurant? A chef. And what is a chef? A chef is a form of an artist. A chef is someone that says, I love cooking. I want to make this delicious food. Oh, I have this idea. Like, I would love making Japanese Mexican fusion with this Filipino spice. It's so delicious. That's what artists do, including artists who manifest their artistry through cooking. But it actually turns out, just like your show business is 10% show and 90% business, in order to run a successful restaurant, the food kind of doesn't matter, or the food is like a very small detail. To run a successful restaurant, here are things that matter much more. Finding an excellent location, negotiating with the landlord so you can have a rent that doesn't kill you, managing a staff of uneducated, barely paid waiters, ensuring that you have the procurement processes to make sure you have all the fresh ingredients, but not just that, as based on when people are more or less likely to come, you have the ingredients necessary or not. Marketing skills in order to plan the restaurant to get people interested. Like, it's all these skills that are deeply important that have nothing to do with the food. So the food is like a good 2% or something of the success. But as a result, you get people who think and act like artists, and maybe they do that 2% amazingly, but just completely fail on the other 98%.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you kind of referenced, all of that is needed before anyone steps into the restaurant.
1,000%. 1,000%.
And again, I tried to launch into a theatre show before I built any sort of audience or following. And not only that, but I was doing in areas where I'd never even gigged before, let alone know anyone or have anyone know me.
This Dunster Pool, whatever it was called, how far is it from where you live?
So it's a couple of hours drive, so if not more. So
I didn't realize that. That's actually goes to another lesson, which is be especially careful when you're going outside of your target area.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going into an area where I'd never gigged before. No one had seen me. I didn't have connections. The few connections I had resulted in about 8 tickets. So it wasn't anywhere near what was needed.
I think this is an important lesson, and not just for a physical area. Like, you're a comedian going 3 hours away. That is a huge risk factor, but you can think about areas in different ways. If you've spent your whole career selling socks and you're the world expert in socks and you know how to build and run socks, that doesn't mean you have the skill set to go to a different area of whatever, running a restaurant. So you want to go out of the sock industry into the restaurant industry, be doubly careful there.
Absolutely. You've got to know what you're walking into. And I had no idea. But also, I think my other key lesson was be careful who you listen to. I listened to the theatre, and I'm not blaming the theatre here because they're probably factually right. The guys that program theatres know what they're doing most of the time. They know maybe magic sells and comedy sells, and that's probably true, and family sells. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'll sell just because I fit into those categories. I'm trying to think of a comedian that everyone in your audience would know, but going to see a comedian that is a big name, that's why comedy sells, because they're going for that. They're going for that brand.
I'm so old. All my favorite comedians died, so I don't even know who to listen to.
They don't sell many tickets, but
I grew up obsessed with George Carlin.
Okay.
And actually, inspired by your British accent, when I was in high school, I memorized Monty Python's movies.
Oh, wow. Can you still
They're
remember?
Oh my God. I'm not sure I can quote anything on the spot, but in often actually in business meetings all the time for a little business advice, I quote the aqueduct scene from The Life of Brian. Do you know that scene?
It's been a long time, but remind me.
I'll remind you. It basically takes place in ancient Judea, in the
Yeah.
time of Jesus, where it's like all these Jewish rebels complaining against the Romans and like organizing rebellions. It's about like a comedy version of like about the rebellions against the Roman rule. And there's this scene where like the rebels are all planning against the Romans, and the leader says to everyone, "What have the Romans ever done for us?" And then one guy, Peter, says, "They built the aqueduct." And then the leader says, "Okay, the Romans built the aqueduct, but other than the aqueduct, what have the Romans ever done for us?" And then someone else says, "Oh, they supply us with food." "Okay, other than food and the aqueduct, what have the Romans ever done for us?" Someone else says, "Oh, they've given us healthcare." There's other than food, healthcare, aqueduct, and they just keep on going on this long list until it turns out they've done everything. By the way, that it's brilliant. It's a brilliant moment from Monty Python, but actually, it's such a good piece of business and life advice in general, because there are all these people that complain about everything. But when you look at it from the other side, actually the other side that you're complaining about is doing a friggin' huge amount of really, really important, hard stuff that you never see yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just so much to learn, I think. And I think, yeah, where do we get to? Be careful. Be careful who you listen to, and bearing in mind the context. People would go to a comedy night because they're not taking a risk at a comedy night. There's multiple comedians. They know what they're buying. They're buying a ticket to see me, and it's an unknown. They're taking a huge risk, and I'm charging them 14 quid for the risk they're taking. And so, yeah, the reality of that set in pretty quickly.
So I love those lessons. I have a few more lessons that I would like to add to that, in addition to your lessons, which are really important. As a third lesson, read the fine print of the contracts.
Very true point. Very good. I think, I don't know if you've picked this up yet, Morgan, but I'm a bit of an optimist and a bit of a positive kind of guy. And I think I don't know if I don't think I really read the contract, but even if I did, I probably went, "Oh, it's fine. We'll do that. No problem." And again, there's a reality hit here, isn't there? Read the small print, read the contract. I remember distinctly Yvonne, my agent, pointing this bit of the contract out because it's a big theatre. This clause didn't come up in any of the others.
So you remember her pointing out this clause before you even signed the contract?
Yeah, but my positivity and my kind of this is going to be amazing idea and attitude went, "That's fine, we'll do that." I didn't realize quite how much of a commitment I was entering into.
There's a phrase that economists often use that's often attributed to Alan Greenspan, to say, because he would always say he was cautiously optimistic. And
Yeah.
I think that's a healthy balance. Like, you want to be optimistic, but not crazy unrealistic optimistic.
Yeah, and I was, and I even now my wife often says, "Tom, like my wife counterbalances me," and so she's good because she's almost opposite, and that's not to say that she's negative. Just before I say that, but she's not negative, but she looks at things very differently. And so quite often when I'm in my super positive mode, she brings that caution, and actually that's been really helpful in shaping my business approach from then on. So yeah, you do need someone, if not you, if you're an optimist, if you're only see the positives and believe you can push through, you do need someone who can just ask those difficult questions and bring about that difficult reality from time to time. I wish I'd had when I was reading that contract.
In my experience, high performing companies that I ever work with tend to be led by two people, by the CEO and the COO working together. And in my experience, that there's a personality breakdown where the CEO, the chief executive officer, tends to be wildly optimistic. Yeah, no, we can do this, make a deal, go here, go build a millionaire. He has like the big vision presenting forward, while the COO, the chief operational officer, tends to be the realistic one side. Okay, how are you actually going to make that happen? And you kind of need this push and pull between both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish I'd had that, because it might have been a better experience, or at least we could have cancelled the whole thing much earlier on and managed to get out of the contract. Yeah, what a lesson, hey? You learn these things in hindsight, don't you?
Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. So there's some other possible lessons that I want to draw out here. Let's talk about this Yvonne person. That it's surprising to me that Yvonne said, hey, do you want to sign this contract? Oh, they have this provision, and read it to you. Because I would have thought that a manager would have basically recommended to you, dude, realistically, there's no way. Like in the CEO optimistic, COO realistic, I would have predicted that like the artist is the CEO optimistic one, but the role of the manager or the agent would have been the down to earth. What can we achieve? What can we not?
So Yvonne's right. She wasn't a manager. She was I think she refers to herself as a theatre promoter. Okay, but no, I think that's what she calls. And so ultimately, the ball is in my court. It's like she didn't have any of the kind of contractual responsibility. She was basically, her job is like the middle person. If I'd have had a manager, Yvonne would have dealt with my manager. If that makes sense.
I see.
So she was the middle person. So at the same time, I guess she did try and coach me at the time in what that was. But again, I think overridden. She was just pleased that she'd got me this gig, and she did caution me with it, but I was like, no, let's go. And it's funny because the way she would have earned money out of it was that she would get a percentage of my earnings. Yes. And so she didn't benefit much from that gig either. But I think also we were both, because it was early on in my journey of that, I think there was a bit of an understanding. She was very gracious in this because she didn't really need to be like this. She could have just said no, not at all, and not bothered. But there was a sense of, this is the beginning of something, therefore we have to push through some of the challenges, right? And I think I was taking that attitude as well. I was thinking, this is the beginning of a journey. It's not going to be the best, but it's setting in motion what I want in years to come. Now I've changed direction a little bit. I've gone down the corporate route, and that's great, and I love it. And it's much more financially viable than selling 50 tickets. But I think there's a sense of early stage, push through the challenges and reap the rewards later. But the thing to note is, I think that blinded us to the reality of in the moment, and I could have made wiser decisions in the moment if I really thought about it.
These are all excellent learnings and wise advice, and I am still cringing thinking about that moment of you in the theater. Do you happen to have any photos of you? Because I kind of wanted at that show.
Do you know, I'm going to have to find it, and you can slot it in. I did. I took an audience selfie. But do you know?
Oh no, you took an audience selfie?
Well, do you know, I would never normally do it, right? I would never normally do it in that scenario, because there was barely, I say audience selfie, it was a row of seats selfie, really. There was no one there.
Audience selfie.
But here's the thing, right? I was contracted to do 2 45-minute sets, okay? And I initially, when we booked it in, my plan was to have another guy do a bit of a warm-up act in the first, and then I would do maybe an hour and 20 in total. Yeah. But again, I presume that was okay. And I mean, thankfully I didn't, because imagine having someone else to pay when I wasn't even earning that would have been another 300-400 quid or whatever. But I didn't realize until last minute that, and Yvonne said to me, she said, you can't just slot in a warm-up act because theatres get nervous about if people complain that they paid to see you and the whole time was spent with the warm. You have to promote the warm-up act on the poster, otherwise they won't let you do it. Right.
By the way, I never knew that. I've always seen on posters like they always have like the opening act as part of the poster, and I have wondered in the past, why do they even promote the opening act? Who cares? But I actually like that to prevent people from complaining.
Yeah, it's so that people can, if they complain, the theatre have a legitimate thing of saying, well, he is on the poster. Yes, you might have come to see the main act, but part of the deal when you bought this ticket in the advertising, it is that there's a warm-up act. And so they make you state it, and I hadn't stated it. And so I couldn't have a warm-up act. Therefore, I was starting to panic that I was going to underrun of the 45 minutes in each half, right? And I knew the first half would be okay. I knew I had a strong 45 minutes. But in the second half, I wasn't too sure. I was thinking, if this goes quick, then I could fall short of about 10, 15 minutes. And so to fill the time, I mean, it's awful to say this because you should, as doing a professional show in a theatre, an artist should not be filling time. It should be a polished, delivered show that you've worked on and, professionally done. But no, I was stupid, basically. And I was trying to fill time. And I thought, I'm just going to have to do an audience selfie. Of course, little did I know there would be 50 people in the audience. So if I can find the selfie, Morgan, I will send it over.
Please.
Because it is like, I mean, I never posted it. I said I was going to post it on social media. Of course, I never did because
this could be your big chance.
I didn't want to go public with my big failure at that moment, but I will. I'm happy to do it. I'm over it now. I've had therapy and everything since. So
this one incident led to 8 years of therapy.
So yes, I will send you the photo, but I purely did the selfie just because I needed to fill time in order not to run short.
It's a cliche, but I believe it. That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So it seems like you emerged from that after the therapy, like being able to laugh at it, deal with it, prepared for the worst. It's an amazing attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I look back now and any bad gig I have these days is nowhere near as bad as that.
It's not going to be as bad.
It's all relative.
There's a line from the early 20th century German thinker, Arthur Schopenhauer. He said that he recommended waking up every morning, imagining and preparing yourself to eat a live frog that day. And his argument is this. He's like, if you wake up and prepare yourself to eat the live frog, say today's the day I'm going to do it. What's going to happen? Well, on almost every day of your life, you're not going to have to eat a live frog nor anything worse. So you've already had a great day. You're like, the day ended, you go to sleep. You're like, dude, it's so much better than I expected. I thought I was going to have to eat this frog alive, but I didn't. My day is so great because I didn't have to do this horrible, terrible, evil thing that I thought I was going to do. And then on the one case in a million, once in your life or whatever, if the truly terrible thing happens, it's actually not that terrible because if you're like all prepared for it, like the worst terrible things are ones that are by surprise. But when you're like already, you know you're going to do it, you spent years preparing this terrible thing. It's just what you do. So even on the downside, it's not as bad.
I like that. I like that. It makes me think of, there's a comedian in the UK called Sarah Millican. I think she's known worldwide, actually. She's done a bit of a worldwide tour, called Sarah Millican. And she's got a statement that says, she calls it Millican's Law. It's the simple statement of whether or not you have a good gig or a bad gig, because every comedian has great gigs and awful gigs. She says, whether or not you have a good gig or a bad gig, you have to be over it by 11 o'clock the next morning. She said, you can drive home, you can wallow in your sorrows, you can celebrate your success, but by 11 o'clock the next morning, get over it, because the following night, you can go out and do exactly the same material in exactly the same way and get the opposite response. So you can have a great gig one night, do the same thing the next night and get a terrible response. But equally, you can have a terrible gig tonight and then tomorrow go and do it and you're seen as the funniest guy on the planet. So similar to the eat the live frog thing, if you're over whether it was good or bad gig last night, if you get over it by 11, then tonight or tomorrow night doesn't seem as bad or as good. It's all kind of relative and in balance.
Yeah, I love it. I thought of Schopenhauer's line because it reminded me of like that moment with the 800 person effectively empty audience was basically you eating the live frog.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So now because you had this live frog, this terrible experience, like everything else, you're prepared for it.
Absolutely. And unless I do a gig where there's only 49 people or less, then I'm prepared.
In such a huge space, if there are 49 people in a space planned for 30, you're doing well.
Absolutely. It's all context, isn't it? It's all context. If those 50 people came to my house, we'd be squashed and packed.
If I were to open a restaurant, I would rather open a restaurant in a tiny little place rather than a huge space, because effectively with all your marketing, everything you do, you'll use a certain number of people. And if you get 20 people a night in a place aimed for that's the size of 8 people, it's like packed and looks like you're packed, and it's great marketing, as opposed to those same 20 people in a space for 800 people. Well, then it looks like a moment like in your story.
I give exactly the same advice to when people book me to do a show for their group and they're saying, oh, what sort of venue should we put it in? And I always say, book a venue that you know you can fill, because just like you've said, you want to, even at low ticket sales, you want a venue that feels like it's full, because if it feels full, there's an atmosphere, there's a vibe, you can hear people chatting and laughing and engaging. If you have 20 people in a place for 800, it's going to be very kind of cold in the sense of there's no atmosphere and it's lacking in any sort of energy.
Excellent advice. And with that, we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of different advice on comedy. I didn't know Milliken's Law, and I'm still cringing thinking about the story, and we've gotten some great lessons for it. But above that, we've gotten a bunch of laughs as well. And I think one of my big takeaways is just this is like one of the funnier, most enjoyable podcasts. And I think it's I meant it before when I said if I were in your position, I would have been like crying or cringing. And the fact that you were laughing about it before, like knowing there were 30 people signed up before it even happened, I would have been in freak out mode. So I think this is a way I can learn from you. So thank you for your advice and the comedy and everything.
Well, it was painful at the time, but it makes a good story now, doesn't it? So there we go.
Exactly. And to everyone who's been watching this episode, thank you for staying around. And we hope that you both learned a lot and were laughing along with us as well. Until next time.
Thanks, Morgan.